Omar is in what you would call trouble, okay? This is trouble with a capital T. And Timmy Walz is along for the ride. The two of them are really in it because you know what? This is coming from her district, you guys. It's her district where the majority of this fraud was going on. I mean, they've already got some convictions. We're talking about $1 billion, and now estimates today, brand new, of roughly $8 million. That's the latest and greatest. We're talking about a whole lot of money, and I don't know as they really have this kind of plausible deniability, if you would. Welcome to the program. I'm Trish Regan. Make sure you subscribe, share, like. I'm watching your comments in real time, and we got a big story on our hands because this is not looking good for Ilhan Omar. It is not looking good for Timmy Walz. We've got a lot of ties, it seems, between Ilhan Omar and the fraudsters. I mean, some of them are already convicted and a lot more allegations out there. I mean, it's a very, very big deal, you guys. And I got to just say, it circles right back to the lady that I know none of you like. This is the big story, right? The New York Times, imagine that. The New York Times was actually the first to break this, where they were talking about the Somali community allegedly stealing up to $1 billion. I mean, it's not even allegedly. I think they have these convictions in many of the cases. You're talking about 70 some odd people. And who's at the center of it? But the woman whose district it seemed to be involved in. Yeah, that would be Ilhan Omar. You see her front and center there. And this is going to, I suspect, become a bigger and bigger and bigger problem. Because it's growing. I mean, the Small Business Association is now looking into it, and they found like $1 million new within the last 24 hours. But most people are saying that's just the tip of the iceberg, that this was at least $1 billion, possibly $8 billion.
All right, this news just breaking moments ago. Fox News has obtained photos of one of the Somali illegal immigrants wrapped up in the Minnesota fraud scandal, posing with several high-profile Minnesota Democrats, including Congresswoman Ilhan Omar and Governor Tim Walz. The man pictured is Abdul Dahir Ibrahim. He entered the country in 2000 and has had an order for removal since 2004. He also has a prior conviction in Canada for asylum and welfare fraud. ICE tells Fox News Ibrahim was granted temporary protected status for 10 years, but should have never been eligible.
No, probably should not have been eligible, right? I mean, what's this about? I mean, again, I go back to Ilhan Omar and her district. The majority of the convictions are happening within her district. It's happening in Timmy Walz's state. We have one lawmaker coming forward today saying that she's been told by some whistleblowers that Timmy was told about this. And Timmy was angry and said, why are you telling me about this fraud? It's like they want to stay clear away from it. Well, why do they want to stay clear away from it? And why is Ilhan Omar so tongue-tied when she's asked about it? And by the way, she doesn't blame the people involved. She blames the system. Well, they just made it too easy. Too easy for my people, apparently. $8 billion is the new estimate. Listen.
Investigators are finding in Minnesota is growing by the day. Several of the whistleblowers in Minnesota have also told lawmakers they believe the total amount of fraud could total up to more than $8 billion.
Whoa, okay? $8 billion because they wanted to feed our future, right? They had all these programs to feed kids. Except none of the money was actually going to feed the kids. They had all kinds of social programs. I mean, it's one of the beautiful things about Minnesota, right? Except if you have people that don't buy into the beauty of it and just see an opportunity and they're a bunch of scamsters, well then, so much for Minnesota, right? I mean, this is why, frankly, I mean, I've told you this before, I'll tell you again, this is why socialism, frankly, does not work, will never work, because it underestimates the power of human greed, okay? And you had a lot of greed, apparently specifically within one district, the district belonging to Ms. Representative Ilhan Omar, who is going to be investigated over all of this. And by the way, they're calling for an investigation into her citizenship as well, because there's some questions about just exactly how she got it or how she helped to get her brother his. I mean, I'll leave that aside. And let the FBI work on that one, okay? I'll tell you, this is just unbelievable to me. $8 billion, it's really gross, and there's no reason for this. So all of these people, according to the reporting and according to sources, basically went out there and had their hand out for the piggy bank that would be you and me and all U.S. taxpayers. Anybody working hard, paying their fair share, right? They pay their fair share. These people just go out and take it? Are you kidding me? I don't think so, no. So they don't have a good excuse for this. And you know what? It's getting worse and worse by the day, by the minute, because now we've learned that Ilhan Omar, one of her staff members, according to the New York Post, one of her staff members was one of the people convicted. And this particular staff member may have been involved in the bill that she introduced, which led to $250 million worth of fraud. So she's introducing bills. And don't forget, this is going back to 2020. It was like game on, right? Because the government was spending all kinds of money. And when you had Chuck and Nancy in there with their multi-trillion-dollar plan to nothingness and a plan to fraud, look what happened, okay? So according to the Minnesota-based Center of American Experiments, Bill Gahn, he's telling the Post, Ilhan Omar, she knew these people. She knew these people, and she knew that they were personally making tens of millions of dollars in this program that she helped to get through. So you got to ask questions about Ilhan. You got to ask questions about her staff, for goodness sake. This is one of the staff members. Here he is with Ilhan Omar. He has apparently pocketed millions of dollars in this scheme. He's been convicted. There you go. She also was hanging out with a guy who had a restaurant who made millions of dollars off of this. And that restaurant actually was the restaurant that hosted her victory lap when she won again. I mean, this is really seedy stuff, a whole bunch of them. I mean, we're talking like 70 convictions that they've got, and she has no excuse. She has no excuse. She went on to CNN before it came out that this might be $8 billion, before it came out that the majority of convictions were coming from her district, and before it came out that she was chummy with the restaurant owner who's already been convicted. I mean, she had to have known, right? So it makes sense that she was so inarticulate for her. Usually she's so poised, right? Oh, she looks down on everybody. Certainly Americans. Americans are like the worst of the worst, despite the fact that she came here and made a life for herself. And clearly her whole darn community was figuring out how to take advantage of Americans. Good Minnesotan stock. Here she is, blaming the system. Oh, you just made it too darn easy. Don't you get it? You know, well, we can't help ourselves, I guess.
Can you shed any light on why the fraud got so out of control in Minnesota?
I think what happened is that, you know, when you have these kind of new programs that are designed to help people, you're oftentimes relying on third parties to be able to facilitate. And I just think that a lot of the COVID programs that were set up, they were set up so quickly that a lot of the guardrails did not get created.
That's it then. You know, they didn't have guardrails. So can you blame my peeps for going in and, you know, helping themselves? To anywhere from $1 to $8 billion. Again, the latest number that's come out. I mean, come on. So Fox has done some reporting on this. They have gone through and looked at all these ties. We just saw the pictures that just came out of Ilhan and all the people that have been convicted. Here's another Fox report I want to take to you two.
Minnesota Congresswoman Ilhan Omar told CNN this week she believes the fraud spiraled out of control because COVID programs were rolled out without sufficient guardrails. It's also worth noting the owner of the restaurant where Omar held her 2018 victory party is among those from the Somali community who have been convicted of profiting from the schemes.
Wow. I'm going to say that again too, okay? Yeah, Harris, I'm with you. Wow. I mean, you know, you think about what President Trump said the other day. Ooh, do we have it? Do we have it? I think we do. We do. You think about what he said the other day. We're all sitting here going, wow. I mean, holy moly. I wonder if he knew any of this when he just went totally un-PC on Somalian immigrants to the U.S., the people that are now implicated in this massive multi-billion-dollar fraud. Here he is at his finest.
And they contribute nothing. The welfare is like 88%. They contribute nothing. I don't want them in our country, I'll be honest with you, okay? Somebody would say, oh, that's not politically correct. I don't care. I don't want them in our country. Their country's no good for a reason. Their country stinks, and we don't want them in our country. I could say that about other countries, too. I can say it about other countries, too. We don't want them to hell. We have to rebuild our country. You know, our country's at a tipping point. We could go bad. We're at a tipping point. I don't know if people mind me saying that, but I'm saying it. We could go one way or the other, and we're going to go the wrong way if we keep taking in garbage into our country. Ilhan Omar is garbage. She's garbage. Her friends are garbage. These aren't people that work. These aren't people that say, let's go, come on, let's make this place great. These are people that do nothing but complain. They complain. And from where they came from, they got nothing. You know, they came from paradise, and they said, this isn't paradise. But when they come from and they complain and do, we don't want them in our country. Let them go back to where they came from and fix it. Thank you very much, everybody.
Wow. Okay, so wow. Again, you know, we've got a lot of information, as I said, coming into us at this moment. It's reportedly $1 billion, but now new reports saying it could be up to $8 billion. And apparently it's all going back to her district. The majority of convictions coming, and they've got like over 70 convictions already, and they expect to have many more. This is not good. I mean, this is not good. And by the way, it's coming at a critical time for Walz, because he's coming up on an election. And I don't know how he's going to really pull this off, because it just, again, doesn't pass the test at all. Because what was Tim doing? Like, how could he not know? How could Ilhan not know? I think that they probably did. And I think that this is what's going to come back to haunt them in a really big way. There's brand new news out today from one of the state representatives there in Minnesota saying that she had heard from whistleblowers who told her they were told to go away, that the governor did not appreciate this. You know, they don't want to be told about the $8 billion worth of fraud, or at least one at that point that they knew about. So Ilhan Omar allegedly involved, Tim Walz looking the other way. How is that okay? Meanwhile, Timmy's like, oh, not my fault, not my fault. No, just like Ilhan says, oh, it's not their fault. You guys just made it too easy. Shame on you.
Governor Tim Walz, who is up for re-election, is under fire for all of this happening under his watch. But he says they have paused these programs. They've brought in outside auditors to get an idea of how far-reaching this fraud was. They're taking steps to keep it from happening again. And he's defending his management of the state while also taking shots at Republicans and the president.
Of course, he's taking shots at Republicans and the president because, you know, God forbid he actually have any accountability here with his own state and his own. And what about the AG here, right? The AG that apparently they made like 300 arrests, but I think there's a lot of questions about whether or not these arrests were done when everybody else had already found out the information. In other words, did they already know that these things were coming? They already knew the feds were like circling. They already knew that it was turning into a total disaster. And that's when they finally got on board, perhaps. Of course he's blaming the president. I mean, he's so delusional. He's got nothing else to do. I mean, the guy thinks that you need tampons in the men's restroom. That says it all, okay? Little Timmy Walz he's a no good nothing, okay? He's a no good nothing. They got really far in life. God knows why. God knows why. Maybe because he was willing to look the other way a few times. Maybe more than a few times. He thought he was going to be vice president of the United States. Gosh, did we ever dodge a bullet, ladies and gentlemen? Delusional Timmy, here he is, making excuses.
And in spite of the headwinds we're up against, Minnesota ranks economically, economic growth, happiness, number of people insured, education levels, near the very top. So I'll tell you what, I have no interest in having this state look like Oklahoma or Mississippi. And if folks are going to commit crimes here, thinking because our generous spirit and our programs that we have is going to give them some kind of cover, they are sadly mistaken.
Yeah, Minnesota is also now home to the single largest pandemic fraud scheme in the country. And Republicans argue that Walz and other Democrats opened the door to this.
Yeah, lots to be proud of. Hey, Timmy, you guys had the biggest pandemic fraud in history. How do you like that? That's something to brag about, right? Ilhan Omar, your district is the one who was doing all the funny stuff, allegedly. My gosh, I just can't believe it. But yet, you know what? Like, it makes sense, really, in retrospect. In retrospect, it does make sense. I mean, let's go back to this famous clip, if I have it, of Ilhan Omar just dumping, totally dumping on Americans, accusing us of having, quote, intellectual stupidity. Now, you know who's stupid? The woman who took the money from all the fraudsters. That's what I would call stupid, Ilhan.
And in spite of the
These people are just idiots. I really, I'm at the point where it's become really hard to have an intellectual debate with any of these people, because the level of stupidity that they are displaying every single day is frankly embarrassing, not just in Congress, but as Americans. And the fact that these people are allowed to say just the most ridiculous things tells you that the dumbing of the United States has arrived, because how else do we get a Trump presidency again?
Excuse me? So you think Americans are dumb? You think anybody that would vote for Trump is dumb? I would just say anybody that wasn't in on the fraud that voted for you is pretty darn dumb. And it's dumb of us to continue to allow you to have a position of power when you're presiding over a district and taking money from fraudster after fraudster after fraudster. Not only that, fraudsters that we knew, and you should have known, were already corrupt. We showed you in the beginning of the show. The guy that was a disaster in Canada had already suffered from all kinds of accusations in Canada, and somehow he comes here and gets a clean slate, and all you have to do is give a little money to Ilhan, and you're on your way. What do you know? That's what it seems like. Does it not? I mean, where's the due diligence? Does nobody vet who's bringing money in the door? Think about that. I mean, I have a little podcast, and when I read an ad for one of the advertisers, we do a lot of due diligence. And I'm not perfect, but I certainly would hope my team, myself, everybody does some due diligence to make sure that we don't have, the equivalent of Ilhan Omar's donors, right? Advertising on the show. Like, where is the due diligence? Does nobody check these people out? How did nobody figure out just exactly who they were and how bad they were? Again, going back to some of the Fox reporting that tells us these guys were bad news.
All right, this news just breaking moments ago. Fox News has obtained photos of one of the Somali illegal immigrants wrapped up in the Minnesota fraud scandal, posing with several high-profile Minnesota Democrats, including Congresswoman Ilhan Omar and Governor Tim Walz. The man pictured is Abdul Dahir Ibrahim. He entered the country in 2000 and has had an order for removal since 2004. He also has a prior conviction in Canada for asylum and welfare fraud. ICE tells Fox News Ibrahim was granted temporary protected status for 10 years, but should have never been eligible.
I mean, clearly not eligible. And he came here anyway and hooked up with her, and the rest is history. For goodness sakes, I'll tell you what, Timmy's in trouble because people are saying now that he knew. That Tim Walz knew everything that was going on. That's what the latest and greatest, shall we say, from a Minnesota state rep who spoke with whistleblowers who say, Timmy didn't want to hear about this. And when they came forward making these allegations about fraud, they were told effectively to go away. Take a listen to this. This is an important development.
The whistleblowers that I've spoken to are saying that the governor knew, and the governor and lieutenant governor and even Chris Schmitter, who was his chief of staff, came to them as staff and scolded them for pointing out fraud.
Woo! okay, you get scolded. You see, in the Walz administration, if you come forward and say Ilhan Omar's district is running like billions of dollars worth of fraud with all these programs. I mean, in one case, the New York Times reported on this, there was a program for kids in school for autism. This is so sad, actually. It's just actually so painful to hear this. And the autism program would give, again, per the New York Times, money to the state and to the team of doctors or professionals that would be treating the kid with the autism. They had all these educational experts, etc. And the deal was that they would have the parents say, yeah, my kid is autistic, regardless of whether or not the kid was autistic. They must have had a huge uptick in Ilhan Omar's district of autistic kids. And so the parents would then take some of the money because these were kickback schemes. And then the group that allegedly was providing the services, they made off with all the funds. I mean, this is really atrocious. It's like so blatantly un-American, which gets us back to the president in his very un-PC moment.
And they contribute nothing. The welfare is like 88%. They contribute nothing. I don't want them in our country, I'll be honest with you, okay? Somebody would say, oh, that's not politically correct. I don't care. I don't want them in our country. Their country's no good for a reason. Their country stinks, and we don't want them in our country. I could say that about other countries, too. I can say it about other countries, too. We don't want them to hell. We have to rebuild our country. You know, our country's at a tipping point. We could go bad. We're at a tipping point. I don't know if people mind me saying that, but I'm saying it. We could go one way or the other.
And it looks like,
we're gonna go
I'm
the
just
wrong
going to
way.
let you know, Minnesota went one way. All right, Minnesota went one way. You have only to look at Mr. Timmy Walz and his little flag escapade.
All right,
Remember that?
Whoa, wait a minute.
Okay, so he's taking down the Minnesota flag. They decided to redo it, to redesign it. And the new one bears, shall we say, a striking resemblance.
There, that's better.
There you go. Okay, you see that flag that is now behind him. I kind of liked the old one. It kind of had a nice sort of way about it. Well, the Somalia flag, actually, let's see if we can pull this up, is very similar now to the Minnesota flag. And that's just a little weird, okay? And I remember I got in like a little bit of trouble with a social media platform when I originally did this. I think it was over on Facebook, where they didn't like that I somehow said this because they were trying to say, no, that it's not the case. I will say that they look awfully similar. And they've got the star and they got a similar color scheme. And, you know, I really don't know how else you want to say that. I'm trying to see if I can find a picture of the Somalia flag to show you guys. But suffice it to say, similar colors in the Somalia flag and very similar star. So that kind of caught a lot of people off guard, but it goes back to what Donald Trump was saying, that we're kind of at risk here. You know, you're losing your culture somewhere along the way when we have people running $1 to $8 billion worth of fraud out of Ilhan Omar's district. I mean, I just don't know what to tell you. I think that somebody's going to have to step in and do some serious investigative work, which the feds are apparently doing at this moment. I would also recommend they do some more investigative work for one Letitia James. Now, I know that Letitia James is apparently not going to get indicted in the Eastern Virginia district now. They tried a second indictment, remember, and that news came out late yesterday, actually after yesterday's show. But I got to go back to a story that I started reporting on and was clued into both via the Financial Times, paper out of London, as well as some reporting that the Gateway Pundit had done. And I thought that this was really suspicious. I've done a lot on terror financing in my career in the past, and this struck me because Letitia James, who's supposed to be responsible for the sort of clearinghouse, if you would, of any money that's going through New York. A lot of money goes through New York because don't forget, the oil trade itself, right, is done in dollars. Oil per barrel is priced in dollars. So when you have sanctions in place and you're not allowing Iranian oil and you're not, transacting with Iran or Russia for that matter, well, what happens when everything and all of those transactions are done in dollars? That's when some of these countries start to look for a workaround. And in the case of Iran, it seems that they were looking for a workaround, and guess what? They found one thanks to Letitia James, which has me asking a question that it's sort of similar to what I'm asking with Timmy here, is did she deliberately look away? I mean, Kathy Hochul too, but this comes under Letitia James's jurisdiction as AG of New York. Why was she allowing for nearly $10 billion to be going through New York banks that shouldn't have gone through, with, by the way, a bank that had a history of laundering money for Iran? I mean, this is something to see. So let's back up for a second. Here's a story in the Financial Times. Standard Charter's Iran transactions, the subject of new whistleblower claims. Apparently this bank, which is a British bank, had all this money going through New York. Again, you got to transfer everything into dollars so that they could then send it to Iran. It's nearly $10 billion worth of alleged money laundering. And they had a history, by the way, of money laundering for none other than Iran. And we're told that Letitia James's office was informed of this, and they didn't do anything. So is this a Timmy situation where you just look the other way? We don't really want to know about this? We had sanctions in place, by the way, that was under the Biden administration. That was her president, right, who put in those sanctions. And yet this money was allowed to go through New York. And despite her and her staff being told about it, like, they looked the other way. Does anybody else find that suspicious? I mean, I'm just saying, maybe you forget about the mortgage thing for a minute, because to me, this seems like a bigger deal. And nobody's talking about it. I get it. It's complicated, okay? You're money laundering with Iran. It's complicated. And Standard Chartered Bank and this, that, and the other. And we got to go and read the FT out of London. But you know what? We're going to do it. We're going to do it because this is important. And somebody's got to pay attention to this, because this is a big kahuna, I think. You're talking about $9.6 billion in foreign exchange transactions tied to the Islamic Republic with a notional value, according to the filings, of $100 billion. The transactions were allegedly carried out between 2008 and 2013 after the London headquartered bank had announced it would cease all new business with Iranian customers in 2007. Forgive me, that's the old one. Okay, that's the old one. That's how we know that Standard Chartered Bank has some sketchy stuff going on. The new information that you need to know about is what was going down in most recent years. In early 2024, whistleblowers came forward, sanctioned financing experts, and they alleged that Standard Chartered Bank's license should be taken away. They shouldn't be doing business in the state of New York because they were flushing money right through the system. You see, it has to go through New York because that's the financial capital of the world, and where you're going to get your dollars, you're going to get them in New York. So all the dollars maybe being laundered, let's say, some country that wants to do business with Iran and wants Iranian oil, well, let's call it China, for example, because, why not? Okay, China wants to do business with Iran, but they need dollars. Like, they've got to do this in dollars, and they've got to send dollars to Iran. So how do they get dollars? They have to come to New York. And this is actually why the U.S. is the hegemonic power of the world. This is why we do control everything. Guess what? Our king dollar really, really matters, because all this money that gets put from A to B to Z has to go through our financial system. In this case, it was going through New York. And this is why New York has kind of an important role to play in all of this. And maybe it shouldn't. Maybe it needs to go to Texas, because maybe Texas would wake up and say, we don't know if we want all this money going to the Iranians. So Gateway Pundit did a really good story on this over the summer. And I want to just bring your attention back to this at this moment in time, because I realize, okay, people are upset. She's not getting indicted for the alleged mortgage fraud, but maybe that was sort of a distraction, shall we say, because the bigger story might be that she just ignored this and her staff members ignored this. And you have to ask, why? In early 2024, New York Attorney General was briefed on all of this, but she did nothing other than reapprove Standard Chartered Bank's annual license. The New York Attorney General was briefed in 2 meetings in February and March of 2024 about the $9.6 billion in illegal payments. So if you're the Attorney General of New York and you get $9.6 billion going right through your banks in New York, I mean, it's not our bank, it's a British bank, but it had a location in New York because it needs the dollars, okay? So that's how it works. So this is going through Standard Chartered Bank per these allegations, and you don't say anything? even though people are coming back to you and saying, hey, you know, this is a company that, by the way, has had a problem in the past. As recently as 2019, they were fined $1.1 billion by U.S. and U.K. authorities for money laundering and sanction breaches, including transactions involving Iran. In 2012, Standard Chartered Bank, again, paid $350 million to settle, I don't know how they're still in business, to settle claims of laundering $250 billion, so $340 million, because they laundered $250 billion for Iranian clients. So I realize that, you know, the mortgage fraud stuff is a big deal, and maybe they'll still get something in New York because there's concerns about that with the brownstone. There's also, of course, concerns about whether or not she was violating Donald Trump's civil rights, going after him as viciously as she did. But I'd also say keep this story in mind. Standard Chartered Bank, Iran transactions, whistleblowers having come out, all the money going through New York, and Letitia's team. I want to see those emails. Somebody's got to pull up those emails. Somebody's going to do an investigation into this, because that actually could be the big kahuna that would be really problematic. Now, I'm not suggesting that she got anything off the top, because, you know, I would certainly, you know, I mean, we'll leave those kinds of things for Ilhan, shall we say. You know, isn't she worth $30 million now, according to new filings? I'm not suggesting that, but I am suggesting that there may have been complete negligence and complete, utter just incompetence, which means why is she the Attorney General of an important state like New York? Really? I mean, this is a problem. You know, she was just so obsessed on one thing and one thing only. You know, I know, we all know, right?
4 days after a judge ordered Donald Trump to pay $355 million for a decade of fraud, New York Attorney General Letitia James says she's prepared to do everything she can to make sure the former president pays his fine, including, she told us, seizing the buildings that bear his name.
If he does not have funds to pay off the judgment, then we will seek, judgment enforcement mechanisms in court, and we will ask the judge to seize his assets.
Okay. I love playing that soundbite because it just kind of sums it all up. She couldn't wait to get her hands on Trump Tower. That's what it was. She wanted to go in there with the ribbon cutting ceremony and say, this is mine. This is New York. So we got him. Anyway, he didn't get him. He became the next president of the United States, and now he's possibly going after you, and I'm just throwing this out there as something that somebody might want to look at. Because I just asked this question. As we consider Timmy Walz and Ilhan Omar, Timmy looking the other way, Ilhan having, donations from all of these people that are making so much money, having people on her staff that are getting convicted of this, and contributing to the $250 million fraud by actually being part of the bill to get all this through that would then enable people to do these things, $250 million, forgive me. I'm just saying, we should be looking at Letitia and these money laundering allegations that she just didn't care about, because we can't be sending $10 billion to Iran. Like that, I get it. Sanction workarounds are very popular and people make a lot of money with those workarounds. So did someone on her staff, I don't want to go there. I don't even want to think that, okay? We're going to keep it very, on the up and up. But I think this is a story we need to pay attention to. So I'm going to continue pounding this, you guys, because first of all, it's sort of my sweet spot, right, in the financial community. And I just really am troubled by the idea that this much money, when we had sanctions in place, put in place by Biden, that this could be happening. Really unbelievable. Oh, it's also unbelievable. The meltdown at your favorite show. Did you see The View yesterday morning? Probably not. I hope you didn't, but you do have to see this because it's quite funny. One of the hosts on that program, I think this one was Joy Behar, got what we could call a reality check, a nice little reality check. And she seems to forget that half the country voted for Donald Trump, actually more than half the country, because you know what? He won the Electoral College and he won the popular vote. Here's Stephen K. Smith, who I'm not normally much of a fan of, but I kind of enjoyed this little number. Watch.
Trump is claiming that he aced the cognitive test. even though he's going on late night Truth Social tirades, in the middle of the night, he's texting and calling Governor Walz a name that we don't use anymore to disability. He's attacking female reporters as piggy and ugly. He's falling asleep in the middle of a meeting. I mean, I said yesterday that Marco Rubio is boring, but not that boring that he would fall asleep. So what do you think's going on with him?
Trump is being Trump.
Really? There's nothing cognitively wrong there?
Well, I'm not saying whether there is or isn't. What I'm saying is 77 million people don't care. They voted for him. And those same 77 million people
will do it again. Is it still that number?
They would do it. Well, you could say that it is or isn't, but the point is he's the president of the United States, despite the onslaught of stuff that was coming his way.
He's the president of the United States. 77 million people voted for him. And you got to have some respect for the president. By the way, did you ever see me carrying on about Biden like they carry on about Trump? Did you ever see anybody actually on the right? I mean, granted, we were concerned about him. I showed you all the tape. I mean, rather infamous ones out of France, right? The Normandy ones. I'll tell you, but I never would carry on or accuse him of the things that they have accused Donald Trump of. Well, for starters, I mean, it's insulting to history. It's insulting to the 6 million Jews that died in the Holocaust. It's insulting to our allies and to our soldiers that fought against Germany. I mean, look, we'd all be speaking German today, right? If it weren't for our soldiers taking a stand in all that. And they're trying to accuse Donald Trump of being Hitler. I mean, this is one of their go-to moves, and I'm sorry, like, I'm a little tired of it. I don't think anybody on the right would ever do such a thing. Like, we don't stoop to that level. They're pretty grotesque when you think about it. I guess they just didn't know how to fight them at all. And, you know, it's kind of funny because Stephen is making the point to another lady on The View that he totally took down. It's quite spectacular. I can't wait to show you. But he's making the point that, you know, you guys kind of did it to yourselves. Like, come on. By going after him and after him and after him and after him, you actually empowered him more. You actually empowered his base because it was so freaking bizarre. On top of which, he's making the point now that you're doing it all over again with the military, for goodness sakes. Now you're trying to divide the military? Who the heck does that? Like, that's pretty bonkers. I told you, I mean, they're looking for some kind of coup, these crazy people. Anyway, Stephen K. Smith gave it quite well, I would say, to Sonny, Houston, whatever her name is, watch.
So you recently accused Senator Mark Kelly, a veteran, an astronaut, of crossing the line for participating in a video reminding troops that they can refuse to follow illegal orders. Let's see some of what you said, my friend.
Sure. You know better, Senator Kelly. You know better. How dare you do that? You could go to the House. You can put up drawer paperwork. You can try to start articles of impeachment if you think there's something illegal. I mean, damn, it ain't like y'all haven't done it before. You impeached the man twice. Where'd that get you? Got us behind back in the White House. Had you left him alone since 2020, maybe he wouldn't be back. You don't tell military men and women to ignore an order from the commander-in-chief. You don't do that.
Caffeine's a bitch, you know?
Now, let me just remind you that Pete Hegseth said in 2016, I do think there have to be consequences for abject war crimes. If you're doing something that is just completely unlawful and ruthless, then there is a consequence for that. That's why the military said it won't follow unlawful orders from their commander-in-chief. Now, given the fact that the secretary himself said that, I'd love to give you the opportunity to perhaps change your position on what you said.
I'm not changing a thing.
Okay.
I didn't stutter when I said it.
You want to stay loud and wrong?
Well, you could call it loud and wrong all you want to. You're entitled to your opinion. I'm entitled to mine.
That's so good, right? You know what? That's the truth of it. You're entitled to your opinion. I'm entitled to mine. And that used to be the America that we lived in until the media went so crazy. And then they just decided they were in charge. Maybe they were always crazy. We were talking about this the other day because even if you go back to pre-World War II, they could have been reporting on what was already kind of out there in the underground. I mean, people were learning about the atrocities that were going on, and yet did the New York Times report on it? No. So you know what the good news is? We don't have to rely on the New York Times anymore. New York Times is like totally irrelevant because they've always got the same garbage and the same bias in their pages. By the way, I got to tell you, the Wall Street Journal is really ticking me off too. I got to go to the FT more often, right? Because the Wall Street Journal, my gosh, I mean, they just hate the president. Really. And it's weird because the business community actually kind of loves him, right? You've seen what the stock market's done since he's come in. And the business community really respects him and loves him. And yet you look at the Wall Street Journal every day, it's like, oh my gosh, they never talk about all the good stuff that's happening in our economy, like the manufacturing jobs that are being added, like the consumer spending numbers going up, all of these things, inflation going down. This is all really good, but you wouldn't know it if you read the Wall Street Journal. So the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, the Washington Post, I mean, been there, done that, right? The Washington Post was the one that was reporting first that Pete Hegseth called for the second strike. And then it turned out that story was wrong, and they learned that Admiral Bradley called for the second strike. And so then the wolves started coming out, right? Like the sharks were like, they smelled blood in the water. And then they just came to pounce. And they're like, okay, now we got him. Second strike. And now he's trying to bury Admiral Bradley. What a loser Pete Hegseth is. You know, how dare he? But it turns out, when you get down to the truth, that yeah, Bradley called for the second strike. And guess what? JAG was in the room, the lawyers that were helping him to make this decision, because they determined that the people still on the boat still had these illicit substances in their possession, and that there were fishermen nearby that could come and get them, and therefore they were still a continued threat. ABC News being forced to report this story. ABC News, by the way, the same producer of The View. Watch.
Tonight, new information. According to a source familiar with the incident, the two survivors climbed back onto the boat after the initial strike. They were believed to be potentially in communication with others and salvaging some of the drugs. Because of that, it was determined they were still in the fight and valid targets. A JAG officer was also giving legal advice.
This backs up the entire second strike. Yes, I mean, it just doesn't get more crystal clear than that. The mission is take out the boat, stop the drugs, keep this vessel and its cargo from reaching our shore using lethal means. And our amazing military, the heroes of the United States Armed Forces, did exactly that. President Trump, Secretary Hegseth, and this entire government are committed to finally using our military to defend our people, our borders, our family, our culture, our history, our heritage, to defend the United States. We're not going off running around the Middle East trying to build democracies in caves and deserts and in distant sands that have never known democracy. We're using the military to protect American security, American prosperity, American lives right here where we live, where our children live.
Yeah. And by the way, a quick little aside, the Supreme Court just agreed to take up the case that will probably happen sometime this summer about citizenship. In other words, if you come to this country illegally, or if you come to this country on vacation, does your child automatically get citizenship just because they were born here when you came? Maybe not. I mean, it's been precedent, right, for like 100 years, but maybe not. So a lot of things going on right now. I mean, in terms of this, they were trying to oust Hegseth, and in doing so, effectively oust Donald Trump, which I go back to Senator Mark Warner sounding pretty darn crazy. I mean, this is crazy town, okay? Crazy town, USA. Senator Mark Warner went on to CNN or Ms. Now, whatever network du jour it happened to be that nobody actually watches, and I played this the other day for you guys. I'm looking at it, I'm like, is he calling for some kind of coup? I mean, I'm about as angry as Stephen Smith right now, because this does not sound good. Tell me what you think.
Unprecedented disrespect when they were all brought to get a pep rally in front of Hegseth and Trump. This is an administration that's fired, uniform generals from the head of the NSA, the head of the Defense Intelligence Agency. Mm-hmm. And I think in many ways, the uniformed military may help save us from this president and his lame people like Hegseth, because I think their commitment is to the Constitution and obviously not to Trump, and I expect Bradley to adhere to that.
So, Senator, let's go a little further on this. What are concerns you have about the legality of these strikes at all?
lame people like what a way to talk about the head of the Pentagon, right? I mean, this is where we are today, guys. This is where we are. And this is, dare I say, getting even a little bit scary. You know the tape. I mean, we don't have to watch the whole thing.
Senator Alyssa Plotkin.
Senator Mark Kelly. Representative Chris DeLuzio.
This is the whole thing that started.
Congresswoman Maggie Goodlander.
Oh, isn't she the wife? Yes, she is the wife of Jake Sullivan, our former head of the NSC. She's a congresswoman from New Hampshire.
Senator Chrissy Houlihan.
Congressman Jason Crow. I was a captain in the United States Navy.
Former CIA officer.
Former Navy. Former paratrooper and Army Ranger.
Former intelligence officer.
Former Air Force.
We want to speak directly to members of the military
and the intelligence community
who take risks each day to keep Americans safe.
We know you are under enormous stress and pressure right now.
Americans trust their military.
But that trust.
And then they go on to basically say that you shouldn't follow any orders that are illegal or that you believe to be illegal, which it's like, duh. I mean, that's kind of what you learn like day one on the job. All right. That's why they have JAG. And you're welcome to protest something and you're welcome to say you think it's illegal. And you know what? If it turns out it's not illegal, well, you're going to be in jail because you didn't follow orders. I mean, it's kind of that simple, right? But you can do that all you want. What's weird is that they would choose to go out there and do this. And I've told you this before, and I say this as somebody who was a history major, and American history major, U.S. history major, who is primarily early American, but it studied a lot of history, okay, at Columbia. And what I would tell you is this has never happened before in history. And we've had rough times. I mean, go to the Civil War, for example, right? Really rough times. But you did not have politicians out there ahead of time trying to plant the seed in someone's head that someone was going to do something really bad. I mean, he hasn't done anything bad. He hasn't done anything illegal. You may dispute it, and it may be disputed in some court, but until the Supreme Court tells you, or the final appellate court tells you it's wrong. I mean, heck, Gavin Newsom learned that one the hard way, right? Gavin Newsom said, you can't come here. I'm not allowing National Guard in California. And then it went all the way up to the Ninth Circuit Court, and the Ninth Circuit said, oh, yes, you can come in. So what, you're going to go after these National Guard people because one lone judge decides something? This is what the Department of War is doing. They're going after Kelly, saying, hey, you're not going to get your retirement, for goodness sakes. We might have court-martial proceedings underway because we're conducting an investigation. We don't understand why you're doing all this, shall we say, crapola. Here's part of his crapola there on... Again, one of those networks, Ms. or CNN. The new graphics really do throw me off. Here we go. Mark Kelly.
So first of all, they confirmed the double tap strike today, the White House, even though 2 days ago, Sean Parnell at the Pentagon was saying the entire story was fabricated, made up out of whole cloth, he said. It seems as though they're saying that Hegseth gave the order to kill everyone on board, a lethal strike, and that Mitch Bradley, Admiral Frank Mitch Bradley was in charge. He's the head of special forces, and that he is the one that gave the order for the second strike, the double tap on the whatever survivors there were. Who is ultimately responsible if there is something wrong with the double tap strike, with the second strike?
Well, Jake, I think it's going to be really important for my committee, the Armed Services Committee that I sit on, the same thing in the House, to get these people in the room and get testimony from them under oath.
Okay, we're doing that, and we know what the testimony is going to be, okay, from Bradley. And then Bradley's going to say, and you guys are going to look like fools, there was a second strike because we were still vulnerable. These people were still coming towards us. So, Mark Kelly, I find this really grotesque that you're trying to divide our military like this and you're trying to solve for something. He's already come out and said, by the way, that when he made that video, he didn't really know that anything like this second strike issue would come up. They just made it in advance of that. So you understand they're trying to find something, anything they can. I mean, forget about the fact that Joe Biden's military had a strike on some innocent people overseas in the Middle East. I mean, it's like that one never happened, right? I mean, wow, all's fair in love and war. Unless you're Donald Trump, for goodness sakes.
Maybe part of it in a skiff and in a secure facility and part of it publicly to get what the exact real story is. I think this is what happens when you put an incompetent individual in perhaps the second most important job in our country, the Secretary of Defense. Pete Hegseth had no business being nominated. Republicans in the Senate should not have confirmed him.
Oh, please.
And he's been there for less than a year
Okay,
now.
so this is we hate Pete. So if it was anyone else, I guess if you had someone, who had had a big job at Boeing or one of these companies, that would have been fine. But God forbid you have a TV anchor who went to Princeton and studied economics and worked on Wall Street and then worked in the military, in the trenches, right? Don't forget, he was Special Forces, and then, ran a veterans fund. God forbid you have somebody with that background, because, the TV thing. Apparently, you strike out with the TV thing. We TV people, we're sometimes smarter than we look. Senator Kelly, believe it or not. General Jack Keane, who is a wonderful, wonderful guy. I don't know if you guys have ever watched him on Fox. He was a very frequent guest on my program, a lovely man, married to a lovely woman. I was actually supposed to be at their wedding, and we had a personal bit of a tragedy that happened that we couldn't be there for it. But he's just salt of the earth, a lovely, lovely man, and apolitical, just, really wants what's best for America and for American safety in the world. And General Jack Keane has come out and said, of course they were authorized for a second strike. I mean, what these guys are talking about is nuts. And so I find that interesting and telling. Let me go to Buzz Patterson as well. Some of you guys have seen this already, but I thought, and I'm not familiar with him. He might just be like somebody on who's more of a private citizen who decided to take a stand on this because he was so horrified by it all. But this is the guy that carried the football for Bill Clinton, nuclear football, in the White House. And he's appalled. He thinks this is awful. Listen to him.
They are violating and they are politically using their positions to undercut the command of President Donald J. Trump, and they're circumventing the chain of command. Congress and members of Senate are not in the chain of command. President Trump is, however, as our commander-in-chief. So I fully support going forward with whatever prosecutions are warranted and legitimate, and I think they are on these individuals. They use their positions, military and in the intelligence community, to expose, I think, and put at risk those of us who serve in uniform. I think that what's going to happen is because they violated the military chain of command, people are going to die. They undercut the underpinnings of the military, which is good order and faith and trust in their leadership. And in my estimation, what they did was treasonous and seditionist, and I hope they are prosecuted to the full extent. Again, my name is Buzz Patterson.
That was a really authentic thing to say. And we'll see what happens because the investigation is going on right now. And the Department of War has said that they are reminding all individuals that military retirees remain subject to the UCMJ for applicable offenses and federal laws such as 18 U.S.C. 2387, prohibiting actions intended to interfere with the loyalty, the morale, or good order and discipline of our armed forces. Any violations will be addressed through appropriate legal channels. I can't believe that they did this. It's like, you guys, I know, you keep trying. And it's like, it only makes them stronger. As Stephen Smith said, it only makes him stronger. As for the second strike, I told you what we heard from General Jack Keane, a guy I totally trust. Dan Crenshaw, I don't know as well, but he was a Special Forces guy, Navy SEAL. Here's what he said.
I can't recall any time in my history doing counterterrorism operations where we strike a group, whether that's a building or a boat or a vehicle, and then we were like, oh, well, they're survivors. We have to go. We can't kill them. Of course we kill them.
So there you are. That's another side of it. I do think with these JAG attorneys coming out trying to accuse Hegseth of a war crime, they're doing everything they can now. They are going, this is a coup. All right, I just said it. Senator Mark Warren, you're dancing around it. But what are you calling for? You're calling for a freaking coup. And why? Why would you do that to your country? I saw somebody say it's all over Maduro. Like, who cares about Maduro? By the way, in the old days, the Democrats wanted somebody that was a little more like us, capitalist, shall we say, to be there in Venezuela. Why would it be better for the people? And by the way, it would be better for us. So, we're all realists here, and they get a ton of oil. We could have our oil companies there, right there in the Orinoco region, drilling away. It's got bigger reserves than that of Saudi Arabia. And so you could have a great relationship with Venezuela, and it would be good for the people. It'd be good for us. It'd be good for the world. And by the way, it's right here in our hemisphere. I'll tell you, Pete knows all about the Monroe Doctrine. We don't need the Chinese and the Venezuelans and the Iranians hanging out in Venezuela 2.5 hours, south of Miami. Well, and change. So, let's make South America great again. Let's make Latin America great again. Let's make the Americas great again. Hey, Argentina's doing it, right? You've got, it looks like, change coming to Honduras. You've got change coming to Chile. Let's get some change in Venezuela. Again, they used to be for this, and now they're not. Right now, they're saying, if you're part of the military and you do something that we don't like, if you're part of the National Guard and we decide you shouldn't be in whatever city that you happen to go, we don't want you in Chicago. Chicago doesn't want you in Chicago, and while this thing plays out in the courts, if we happen to come back into the seat, we're going to go after you. We're going to penalize you. We're coming back to get you. I mean, what are they trying to do? Completely undermine the military of the United States of America. And it's just wrong. You know it's wrong. I know it's wrong. They have gone wild. They are like off the deep end. It's TDS like on steroids. It's a very, very, very bad case. But I'll tell you, it's scary. It's scary for our armed services members. It's scary for our youth. It's scary for all of us. It's scary for anybody who's saved any money, for goodness sakes, or even if you haven't, because they just want to do everything they can to make you irrelevant, as though you're somehow a Nazi because you were a MAGA supporting. I mean, it's half the country that they want to take down. And he hasn't done anything illegal. Again, this is important right now. I've been talking about this because they went out there and they got these regulators to go into these banks and bank people, actually take their bank accounts away. And I know a lot of people who this happened to. Eric Trump, who was on the show the other day, he was one of them. He lost 200 bank accounts, he said, overnight. It was unbelievable because these regulators were doing this. Well, thankfully, President Trump is there now, and he has made this a priority. It's actually an executive order that he put through that you can't do this. But I'll tell you guys, we need more. We need more. We need more because I think the debanking thing is very much still a threat. I mean, clearly, they're going to go after, if you're a member of the National Guard and you happen to be in D.C. and they don't think it's the right thing, even though the mayor was fine with it, even though the city's a lot more cleaned up and safer as a result of it, they're going to go after you for this? Just like they could potentially debank you. I'll tell you, Americans for Free Markets is all over this. They're thanking President Trump along with me. We've teamed up together. Free Markets, forfreemarkets.org. I want you to go check it out if you're interested in sort of participating in this effort. Put in the pressure on your congressperson, because Congress really needs to look at some of this law that's on the books, because you need something stronger, right? Something stronger, a framework to basically fix these outdated laws and increase transparency and accountability in the financial regulation arena, so that future administrations can never, ever, ever weaponize our banks against us again through regulation. These regulators just going in saying, we want this, that, and the other. Heck, if Janet Yellen had gotten her way, Janet Yellen would have had access to any bank account that transacted $600 worth of stuff. I mean, it was bonkers. So lawmakers need to establish a national standard that prohibits any of that kind of stuff, any financial institution from denying services based on your politics, right? Or your religion, for goodness sakes. I mean, religion was another one, because God help you if you were Catholic. God help you if you actually went to the Mass in Latin. They were all over you. To protect the financial freedom of American people, Americans for Free Markets is calling on Congress to advance these critical reforms to strengthen President Trump's leadership on fair access to financial services. You can learn more at Americans for Free Markets. Go to forfreemarkets.org. Portions of the program are brought to you in part by the good folks over at Americans for Free Markets. So go check them out today. They really are doing some good work. By the way, a reminder, 76research.com. If you haven't gone there, that's my firm, my company. We have a great financial newsletter. I'd love you to get it. Use code word dollar, DOLLAR, my gift to you, or get it for somebody that's interested in investing. Maybe as a Christmas present. It's $1 for the first 2 months, then it goes to $9.95 thereafter. Hey, big news. The Epstein files are coming out. Dun, dun, dun. Florida judge just hours ago unsealed the Epstein files as President Trump promised would happen. So, of course, you might be saying, well, where are they? Like, what can we see? What's happening right now? Because you hear news like they've just unsealed the Epstein files, and then you're like, okay, well, Trish, what do you got? What do you got? And the answer is I don't have anything yet, because what they're doing, and I just think it's worth understanding the mechanics of this, when a court file or a record is sealed, it means it's not available to the public, right? But when it's unsealed, that unsealing means that the records are eventually going to be made public. They'll move from the private, secret file into the public record so that anybody in principle can go on and see them. And they'll probably have a website, and you can go to the website. In this case, I think that the estimate is for, I want to say December 19th, that the public will be able to view these in their entirety. But right now, you have people basically going through and just double checking, making sure that victims' names are not in there, et cetera. But given the Transparency Act that was just passed, there's a deadline of 30 days, which would put us on December 19th. So now that the judge has unsealed them, the order is effectively confirming that the grand jury transcripts must be included under that disclosure requirement. And yet, that said, you're not going to see every document necessarily become public. And I think that's an important distinction to be aware of, because the government could still withhold or redact materials that could compromise ongoing investigations, involve classified information, or implicate national security or foreign policy matters. So where does that leave us? I don't know. But on the 19th, we're going to, be doing a lot of reading, I suspect. And part of this may be like, what's not in it? What are we actually seeing? Again, we'll get some more information, but I wanted to at least alert you that that is happening. The other big story that came out today is the news from the Supreme Court that they're going to take on a rather important case, a really important case, because the president has said, you know what? I don't like the idea. Here, let me get it out of my face here. We can see this is the headline that crossed from AP earlier today. I really don't like the idea that you can come to this country. The president has made it clear that you shouldn't be able to just come to the country and spit out a baby, and then all of a sudden that baby gets citizenship for life. That is not what the law was intended to do. And it's interesting, the Supreme Court did decide to take up the lower court's ruling. The lower court was saying, nope, Donald Trump, no way, no how, you're not getting to first base on this. And they're saying that the 14th Amendment actually guarantees birthright citizenship. What's interesting about this is the particular language, I should say, within the 14th Amendment, because it sort of says anybody who's under the jurisdiction, if you would, of the United States. And if you're under the jurisdiction and you have a child here, well then that child would get citizenship. And so this is what's being debated. Let me read it to you. All persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States. So the question is subject to the jurisdiction of. Children of foreign diplomats, because they're not subject to the jurisdiction of, are not American citizens, even though they're born here. Anybody that would be an enemy soldier occupying U.S. territory, you wouldn't get citizenship for your kid. And so, there's a lot of questions here. I mean, especially in light of, the new world in which we live in which you can hop on a plane and come here from China or anywhere else and get American citizenship and keep all your other citizenships too. I mean, that kind of seems like sort of wild, right? And if you have the wealth, you can come here, or if you have the determination, right, and you're willing to cross that border, as millions were during the Biden era because he made it so easy, then you would get that citizenship status. And so his concern is that it's actually putting out the wrong kind of incentives. And it encourages either spies, right? Or it encourages people who come here illegally, because then you get a legal baby. And so this is what's going to be debated, that question of subject to the jurisdiction of. I'm not going to lie, I think it's a tough one, but an interesting one. A very tough one, but a very interesting one, because you think about how it's sort of been the norm for some 100 years, but you also have to think about when this was put in place, and that jurisdiction of statement. If you take that forward to today, are you under the jurisdiction of the United States if you come here illegally? I'm curious to see. I'm going to go out to your comments and just see what you guys are saying. I think it's a big deal that they're actually going to take this on. I mean, and it's actually kind of an encouraging sign, dare I say, for Donald Trump and his administration. He's got some smart lawyers there. Buddy Sanders, thank you so much. Thank you, by the way, to all of you guys for commenting, for being here. We're just exploding here on the Trish Regan channel, and that is so much because you guys are here and you're passionate about this, and I'm passionate about this, and I think together, we have been able to build something, and I'm so excited about it. Same thing actually over on Spotify. Spotify just sent me my year-end report. I'm going to share it with you guys at some point because we were in the top 1% of all videos, and I don't even have that many followers over on Spotify. In fact, if you get a chance, I'd love it if you could follow me on Spotify. Let me see if I can put that link in the chat for you, just so you have it, because it would be great to increase my followers there. I mean, we're doing really well, it seems, but I will be honest with you. I think we only have about 16,000 subs compared to the 1 million we have over here. So, anything you can do, it all helps, every single bit of it. Here is the Spotify link. So do me a favor, subscribe if you can. It's totally free. And the video is there as well. So if you miss it here live, you can probably see it over there. Anyway, it is a very, very big deal that the Supreme Court has agreed to hear this case. And of course, the Democrats are going to be going crazy. They're going to be going nuts. Oh my goodness. Is he going to undo basically a century's worth of sort of norm? And it's possible it could happen. So watch to see what happens with the 14th Amendment. I am going to be back on Monday. We're going to have more live on this Letitia James story because I do think that we need to actually focus on this. And in some ways, the mortgage thing, I know it was interesting, and I do think she should have been indicted for that. I'm kind of perplexed as to why not. But perhaps the bigger, more concerning story is what the heck is going on in New York? How is it that Standard Chartered Bank is alleged to have transacted $10 billion through New York under her jurisdiction, under her eye, under her law, and sent it to Iran? And so you have all the other implications that come with that, right? Because people have talked about the possibility of Ilhan Omar's district with its $1 to $8 billion worth of fraud, sending some of this money back to illicit sources. And the same thing, obviously, Iran's sanctioned, for goodness sakes, goes for Iran. So that could be a really, really big deal. And I promise you, I'm not going to let that one go. I will have new information for you on that on Monday. So I have a busy weekend ahead. I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful weekend. Are you in the holiday spirit? I've got both my trees up. We have two. I'm going to get a third one in here, I think, next week. So 2 trees in the house, and we have to decorate them. The lights are up on one. Yep. We got one au naturel, and then the other is pre-lit, because it's a lot, right? It's a lot. And I don't actually have to put the lights on. My husband does. Anyway, good to have you guys here. Have a wonderful weekend. I'll see you right back on the show Monday. We need to talk about the alleged money laundering that went down right under Letitia's eyes. I'll see you then.